We are now back on the saddle again. The diet saddle, that is. I have to be honest with you though, after buying all that Chinese food and not being able to eat it from yesterday, because I'm trying to stay on the diet, having it haunt me in the fridge was honestly really hard. Not going to lie. But we'll get to that in a second. How much did I weigh today? Well, I went from 64 yesterday to 168 today. Yep, 4 pounds from yesterday to today. Crazy. I guess that's what happens when you eat nothing but a whole lot of sugar, carbs, and fat. Well, at least it was fun, I suppose. All right, let's get down to what was eaten. In the morning, I had a protein tart. 4 grams of carbohydrates. The cinnamon flavored one. It was alright. I liked it well enough. Next, when I got home, I was looking for something to eat, and I noticed there were bits of shrimp and meat in the Chinese food from last night that was hiding in the chow mein. So I meticulously took all of the meat out of the chow mein and ate that. Not sure if I'm going to get any carbohydrate intake from anything that was on the chow mein, but I mean, not gonna lie, that meat looked so good that I was like, I just want to eat that. So I did. Well, after I was done eating the little bits of meat that was in the Chinese takeout leftovers from yesterday, I was like, I want a real meal. So I made a BLT with the keto bread. I fried 4 pieces of bacon. I got the salad mix out from the fridge. I got the keto bread. I put mustard, mayonnaise, and a little bit of cayenne pepper on the bread. I mixed it up, and then I put the salad on top and the tomato slices and the bacon. Overall, I'd give it a big thumbs up. I quite enjoyed it. I also had a bag of cheese-flavored Quest chips as well. Overall, pretty satisfying. Then I thought to myself, wait a minute, I want a little more. I got a little greedy. So I got a cup of coffee and a Nix protein chocolate bar. Don't worry, chocolate bar only has 3 grams of carbohydrates. And that's what I had for lunch. Now finally we have reached dinner. And when I got home for dinner, I once again dug into what meat I could find in the chow mein. And once I ran out of meat to harvest and I couldn't find any more, I put the chow mein away and I decided to have a Quest protein chip bag again. This one was pizza flavored. And after the Quest protein chip bag, remember having 1 ounce of peanuts and a bit of beef jerky, 0 sugar by the way, a mint keto ice cream bar, and the last thing I remember having was a slice of bologna. And that's pretty much what I ate today. Yeah. I'm not sure if I cranked up my carb count that much from eating some of the meat that was hidden in the chow mein, but I did my best to pull off as much of the chow mein as I could just to have the meat. It's making me think that it would be a good idea to try some keto stir fry. I think that would be really good. I remember having some stir fry keto rice, which was basically cauliflower, shredded cauliflower that was fried and mixed with egg and sesame oil, and I remember that tasting really good, and mixing that with some ahi. It really made going keto for a while much easier task. So may have to do that again in the near future. Alrighty, any exercise? Well, once again, nothing strenuous, nothing dedicated. Just walking around the store and pushing carts. That's about it. Alright, now let's get on to the daily update portion of the video. So what I remember was I woke up at around, I think, 10 in the morning. No, it was 9 in the morning. And when I got up, I greeted my mom and sister. My mom wanted to read a curiosity book that we got from Barnes & Noble like 3 years ago, I think. And I agreed to read it with her. I was originally going to reach out for my phone this morning when I woke up, but I thought to myself, nah, I don't need that reactionary overstimulation first thing in the day. I need something a little more feeding of the soul. And I thought reading a book was the perfect way to remedy that request. So we read this curiosity book. It's written by a guy who is the main executive producer for film director Ron Howard. And it's basically him talking about his meetings with some really important people like John McCain, Barack Obama, and the President of the United States at the time, George W. Bush. It was a pretty interesting read, very unique. I enjoyed a lot of the anecdotal reflections. One of the things I did like about it was that when the guy was talking about his experience, he never spoke for the people he was talking about. He just spoke broadly and generally about like how he believed like those people came across to him in a polite and respectful way, while also only mentioning what he said. So I thought that was a nice touch. And another thing that I found interesting was he was talking to Michael Jackson in the book. Yeah, the guy who makes all that music, or made, now he's dead. But yeah, it was really interesting. Basically, he said that Michael Jackson always puts on like this like character when he's out of like kind of shy and restrained. But when he was talking with Michael Jackson and asking him about his process for making music, he suddenly became extremely focused and businesslike and very deliberate, and much like a college professor is how the guy described it. So in my opinion, that was a very interesting insight, because there's a lot of these creative artists and different people, you experience their work and you see a lot of the outside perceptions of them from like the news and things like that. So you have this different warped understanding of who they are. So hearing someone go one-on-one with someone like a normal human being, and not like being put up on a pedestal as like a diva or a god or whatever, really helps humanize the person, makes them feel more just like a genuine human being or genuine individual. Not saying that Michael Jackson was never that. It's just the way was constantly portrayed in the media was that he was like a god of music. And I mean, in all fairness, he really did release a lot of great music, but it was always focused on the glitz and glamour, never the humanity, which I thought was fascinating. But yeah, after we were done reading that book, I remember we split off to do our own things. I decided that I wanted to go and work on my YouTube channel. But before I could do that, I needed to use the restroom. And after I was done using the restroom, I thought to myself, I wonder if I weigh less than I did when I first weighed myself earlier in the morning, because I dropped off some weight. So I weighed myself, and I found that I went from 168 to 167.4. So I was like, dang, that's quite a drop. All right, well, anyways, enough of that information. Let's move on to what was done for the YouTube channel. So I sat in front of my computer, and I was about to get started. But before I could, my antivirus software that I use said it was about to run out in 6 days. So I decided to extend it to another year. I should probably do some research and find one that's like free or better or something like that. Because I'm using Norton, and I don't know, maybe Norton isn't the best, but I've just been using it because it was installed on my computer already. But I should look up reviews on what's the best like antivirus software to have on your PC. But better safe than sorry, I suppose. But after what felt like an hour of going through the steps of buying it and then activating it and then restarting the computer and all that stuff, I was ready to try out recording what I wanted to do with my YouTube channel. But there was a problem. When I opened OBS Studios, I noticed, I always do this before I do something like a live stream or a recording. Not that I really do live streams at all that much, really, but I noticed that the voice was crackling sounding. So I tried to switch the primary voice to analog 1+2 USB, which is what my external microphone is called. Then, afterwards, I noticed that there was no sound coming out of it for some reason. And I realized that's because that two different audio outputs were being monitored at the same time. My main microphone output and the general output of the computer. And when I listened back again to the pre-recording, or what was recorded, it was like an echo sound, and it was still crackly. So I went into the settings, I turned off the additional microphone or sound output. So I only had one output, and that was for the external mic. And I decided to dive deeper into the settings to make sure that the external mic was not using NVIDIA Broadcast, because NVIDIA Broadcast, for whatever reason, when it's used, it gives off a really crackly sound to the audio that I'm just not a fan of at all. And so I switched it to the regular analog 1+2 microphone, and now it sounds very good without any crack in it whatsoever, which is very nice. I really do like that. So after I was done setting up all that, which took like an hour and 20 minutes. Yeah, it took that long. I realized I didn't really have enough time to actually do any substantial desk work. So I was like, well, I guess I could just look at what notes I came up with and create hotkeys and shortcuts on Krita to help get to the information I need. So that's exactly what I did. I reworked hotkeys so that way it was easy for me to jump between different layers. So when I'm going to be talking about them in my Brain Jam extra video, that it's easy to demonstrate what I'm doing. But at the same time, I look at those notes and they're just so wordy and so long that it makes me wonder, is it a good idea to do this? Or should I go a little extra and like pre-record myself reading this and demonstrating it, and then maybe like draw some graphics and put those in between like me describing what I'm talking about, so that way it makes it more visually interesting for the audience. Because the thing I don't like most like about any videos when it's like too wordy, too long, too boring, and it doesn't have like a momentum to it that makes it feel more like there's an urgency to needing to watch what you're watching, I guess. Or maybe not an urgency, but it just it needs to capture attention in a way that feels organic and not long or droning or uninteresting. So I'm definitely going to have to think about my approach. My original plan was to just say exactly what I was studying and then show like all of my notes and then read all my notes immediately. But part of me wonders that might take longer than I really have any time for. Maybe if I describe it and then draw pictures and put those on the screen to show what I'm talking about, so I can simplify things to even easier to understand, maybe that would be the best idea overall. So that's what I'm playing around with. Well, after doing all that setup and not being able to make any Brain Jam extra content, it was then time to get ready for work, but then I suddenly got a notification on my YouTube account that one of my channels I'm subscribed to, the person who posted it just announced the very depressing news that something bad happened. And when I watched it, I felt really bad for the individual. So I made sure to send them my regards in the comment section, because it sounds like they're going through a lot. Yeah, it was very sad. Well, after I did that, I realized I needed to get ready for work. So I got dressed. I popped a protein tart into the microwave for 10 seconds. I had some coffee and with some ice in it, and it was okay. Then I left. I said goodbye to my mom before leaving, of course. And I arrived at work. Now at work, if I'm remembering correctly, the first hour was spent doing a lot. And as I was doing a lot, I was doing some deep breath work just to kind of help, like, center my mind and really focus on my intentions for the day. Just having a good attitude and being, like, present and not, like, being too, like, rushy with things. So, yeah, that was nice. It's one of the reasons why I like LOT so much. It gives you time by yourself to really, like, reflect and understand, like, what's going on, and I like that. Well, after that, I arrived back at work, or not at work, but inside, where I was tasked with bagging for the customers for an hour. It's the second hour, and as I was doing it, we were just making some nice small talk between me and the cashiers and the customers. It was nice. I really liked it. I made sure to get a phone for delivery orders too, as well. One of the things that I found interesting about the experience was that one of my coworkers who is working as a cashier wanted to tell me about how they are studying art, and they are learning of this process called the Principles of Gerald, I believe is what it was, which is basically, he described this to me later before I left for the day, that you can take a specific shape, like a triangle or a circle, and you can put those shapes next to each other in a way where it helps guide the viewer's eyes to help them understand what they're looking at. This is the first time I've ever heard of this principle, but I thought it was very interesting and unique nonetheless. Now, that was my explanation, and to be totally fair, I could have misreported exactly what it was, but based on how I understood it, that's how I am trying to understand how it is. Like I said, it could actually mean something different, but that was my conclusion based on the information I was given by my coworker. I just thought it was really interesting how he wanted to tell me about that. It makes me believe that I am on a correct path when it comes to pursuing, developing my understanding of art as a medium, and to really get to grips with it, because I think art matters, and people will say, oh, but AI, right? And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, but AI is like basically what happens when a company or a restaurant becomes corporate and basically creates an amalgamation of what they think people like about their product by spreading as many chains as possible of their restaurant, and then just making the same exact like food, same exact expectations. And that's kind of what AI is in a way. It's taking like what people expect about something already and kind of reconfiguring it into something that people kind of want. And don't get me wrong, I have had a lot of fun with AI. I haven't really messed around with it too recently, other than doing some previous work with my mom on the back room that's being worked on. But I do agree that, like, at the end of the day, what I find interesting about art is each individual's unique perspective and their take on the medium. The humanity of art is important because it helps us connect with our like deeper selves, like, and gets us to want to ask questions about life and try to understand what's going on. And I think that's really important, and I don't think that can be recreated by a computer, not even the best computer. I mean, it could create an amalgamation of it, but it's never going to be like that little hole in the wall restaurant that has that really unique blend of herbs and spices that in its like curry dish that no one has ever had before, and it's extremely unique to that location. It's always served different every time because it's made by like the same like family over the course of generations. That saying something like that gives it more historical, cultural weight than, oh, it's just a bunch of synthetic images mashed together to create an amalgamation of what you think something should look like. And so that's why I think like doing art by hand with humans completely behind the wheel is still important and still matters. And I hope it continues to stay that way. I am all for AI making certain things easier. I am all for it being a tool. I am all for it being something to just mess around with and have fun with. I'm also all for it making boring, mundane tasks like obsolete because the robot can do it and the humans can pursue more fulfilling work. I like all that stuff about AI. I don't like it when AI is threatening like what it means to be a human being. That's where I start to draw the line. But anyways, that was a long rant, wasn't it? Well, let's move on. After we had that interesting conversation that was actually spread between the first half of the shift and the very end of the second half of the shift, yeah, definitely opened my eyes on a few things, that's for sure. Then the next 2 hours after the second hour was spent doing sweeps. And one of the first things I needed to do was wipe the floor down that had water spilt on it in the floral area. I helped one of my coworkers out. They had to lift a really wet box, and I was able to wipe everything down. worked out pretty well. And after that, I needed to do my sweeps. I needed to clock them in. So I swept the produce area, I swept the break room area, and I also swept the entirety of the store. I remember when I was sweeping the break room area, my coworker that I was talking about was doing art on his tablet. And I was taking a little glance at what he was doing, and I thought it looked pretty cool. I remember it being like a hand pointing forward. It had really good perspective, really good use of color. Like, you know, that's the thing I like about, like, another thing I like about human art. It's very intentional. Like, there's an intention with every single stroke and every single decision made on that page that makes it have meaning and depth. And even if, like, you're a casual passerby or just taking a quick glance, I think it evokes more strong emotion, because if you were to just stand there and take a longer look, you'd see there's just more to it than what is being described. So I just wanted to point that out. Well, anyways, after 2 hours of lot, I punched out for lunch, but not before I was asked to check to see if there was someone waiting for delivery groceries. And right when I was about to, one of my coworkers did it for me, which I was very grateful for. Well, they didn't do it for me, they did it for the customer. But it felt like it was done for me, I guess, or maybe it wasn't, but you know what I mean, because it was around lunchtime and yeah, I wanted to eat. But yeah, I punched out and I left for home. When I got home, I decided to make a BLT while listening to the YouTuber I was talking about earlier and their previous video before the very sad news in their current video. And I thought it was very funny video, also a very sad video, very depressing video at the same time. But it was very real and very gritty too, and I very much enjoyed it, for sure. Definitely opens your eyes to the human experience, what that video was about. Well, anyways, after eating lunch and finishing up the video, I found another video of a guy who was talking about manifesting anything you want through affirmations and guided meditations, and he was talking about like his backstory and how he believes he's become a meme. I don't remember the name of the person. I know it was like a guy with like a black hat and like gloves, and he dressed in a particular way. Someone in the comment section like called him a One Piece character, so I thought that was pretty funny. But anyways, after I was done eating and listening, I said goodbye to my mom and my sister. I drove back to work, and at work it was it was a good closing shift, I would say. I mean, the first hour was spent doing a lot. The second hour was spent, I think it was like I had 2 hours straight of sweeps, but I used that time to take out the trash, refill the bags, and wipe down the check stands. And yeah, the last hour was spent doing a lot, where I cleared a lot before leaving. I punched out. I said goodbye to my coworker who told me more about, he tried to describe what he was learning in a more detailed way, and yeah, I found it very insightful, very interesting about how you take different shapes and you align them in a way that evokes a certain emotion. And then he was using the check stand as an example, and it really made me look at the check stand in a new light, which is another reason why I like art so much. Like, you look at things and, you know, to the casual observer, they're really nothing more than just objects or mundane things. But to someone who's trying to look at them through a more enhanced reality style eye, they say something. Like, when he talked about the check stand, and he talked about how the shapes are mostly composed of like rectangles and triangles, or not triangles, sorry, just rectangles. And he was showing the scanner with the rectangles and all that. It made me realize, I was looking at the little scanner thing, and I noticed like the handle to it was rounded, but the scanner itself was square. The screen was square, the scanning thing was square. Everything had a square boxy look, which definitely gave off the vibe of straight to business, no messing around, just getting a job done in a very controlled way. And the roundness of the handle definitely spoke to like that organic look and feel of things that humans interact with on a day-to-day basis. How we are used to rounded, organic, ergonomically shaped things, and we have to kind of deal with these square, foreign, logical things that are put in our faces all the time. And I just thought that was a really interesting insight that I was thinking about when he was describing his way of understanding the principles of, I think it was Gerald. Yeah. And after that, I decided to talk with ChatGPT on my phone about it. And I got the impression ChatGPT didn't really understand what Gerald was. He was just kind of going off of what I was describing, how my coworker was describing it, saying, yeah, that makes sense. And that was pretty much it. So, big thumbs down on ChatGPT for not understanding that. Guess some things are too obscure even for robots trained on hundreds of hours of data. Yeah, after I was done with my little chat while driving home, I went into the house. I greeted my mom. I was very hungry, so I ate everything I could find in the fridge that was low carb and around the kitchen. And then I took my vitamins. I brushed my teeth as I was watching a new Red Letter Media video about going through all the Joe Dante movies with Rich Evans and Jay Bauman. Very good video. I very much enjoyed. It's part 2. I like it when nerds talk about stuff in a really, I guess you could say, enthusiastic and interested way. It makes you very interested and curious about what they're discussing. So that's pretty dope. Afterwards, I realized, I need to make my update video. And here it is. And I think that's going to have to do it for now. Thank you for stopping by. Let's hope I get some work done on my YouTube channel tomorrow. I think that would be great. At least an hour, you know. Something's better than nothing. Well, that'll have to do for today. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now. What? Well, that's weird. What happened? Oh, well, what do you know? This cheap button I got doesn't work anymore. Guess I'm gonna have to reach around the camera to turn it off.